What's the most no shit, scientific study conclusion that you've ever seen? In high school we each had to write and present a research paper on a unique topic, and my friend wrote about sleep deprivation. It was a very well crafted paper with credible sources, but he got some light ridicule for his conclusion. Sleep is the best cure for sleep deprivation. I get where he's coming from though. Currently, there is no real substitute for a good night's sleep. If you need 8 hours of sleep, you can't regularly get only 5 hours and power through the day with caffeine. It's not sustainable, and you'll feel the detrimental effects soon enough. My roommate and I took completely different paths to the same college every morning and evening. He would always tell me his way was faster. He walked 10 minutes to the underground, switched twice, then took a bus to the campus, while I took a bus that left from a minute in front of our house and dropped off down the street from campus. He was adamant that his way was way faster. Finally one day we decided to test it and left at the exact same time. He got to campus an entire minute ahead of me. It was a well shit moment for him because for 5 months he had been putting in all the effort to save a minute of his day while I sat on the bus and read and study the entire way most days and didn't move. He started taking my way after that. Edit. Some extra info. This was in Barcelona and the route was 30 minutes. I had a housemate that worked at the same place as me. We tried carpooling a bit, but it didn't really stick. Very different after work schedules. Anyway, we took different routes. I always got on the freeway at the first on-ramp. He would take a super convoluted side road route through various residential neighborhoods. It was so important to him that it was established that his way was faster, that he timed each way several times to the second. The average for his way was about 1 minute faster. I was just like, yeah, but I get on the freeway and zone out for 30 minutes listening to the radio at the cost of 1 minute. Microsoft in Japan tested a 4-day work week for 5 weeks. Productivity jumped 40%. They subsidized up to $920 for family vacations. Employees took 25% less time off, even though work days had only reduced 20%. Electricity consumption went down 23% at the office, 59% less paper was used. And wait, get this guys, you'll never believe it. 92% said they liked the shorter week. So productivity increased, consumptions decreased, the work got done, your staff are happier, and take less time off. Your profits in theory increased as your bills decreased. Wonder if it'll catch on. That sentence is contrary to a lot of the predominant psychology of the 19th and 20th century. There's a Harvard professor named Pinker who wrote a book, The Blank Slate, that argues that the general consensus of how the human mind develops did not match the available evidence at the time, but was continued to be believed for a whole host of reasons. The book argues that the failure to adapt to the findings of evidence in human mind development has set psychology back 100 years. So yay, even if that seems intuitive, there's still a lot of debate, and more hard evidence can only help in matching consensus with reality. There's a lot of health disparities research, where the conclusions might boil down to things like people without health insurance / who can't afford medications don't get treated, and it's just like, well, duh. Like I get that there needs to be studies that outright prove it for purposes of policy implementation, but it gets annoying when people essentially create hundreds of different studies just coming to the exact same conclusion that's pretty obvious from a logical standpoint. For instance, someone might make the same study, but they'll just swap out the disease they're looking at, or specify which medication they can't afford. How all these researchers into CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, have discovered that athletes suffering physical contact to the brain once too often, especially in combat sports, is pretty bad for their neurological health. It's funny, because even in pro wrestling, they used to smack each other over the head with a steel chair a lot, and now they don't allow it to happen. Ever. Like, did you really need extensive studies into the brain to know that taking repeated trauma to the head was bad for you? 5G was actually tested for quite a bit, if it is dangerous or not, considering that we don't actually know that much on how strong electromagnetic waves affect humans in long term. At some point an actually serious study determined that living under a power cable increases the likelihood of developing cancer, for example. In the end, it was dismissed because it turns out that people living under a power cable are just generally poorer and have been for generations, which leads to worse living standards, which leads to being ill more easily. Now, 5G is in the same area as that one. Now the reason 5G got more of a backlash is because they rely on much stronger transmitters, considering that they are higher frequency and as such have a shorter range or otherwise. And with the result on whether electromagnetic waves cause cancer or not is that evidence that they do is inconclusive and not that it is complete bogus. WTF. It can be seen as a potentially foolish thing to plant across every single city, at least without some further testing. I'm not condoning the mass panics that have arisen because of this, like that one time in the Netherlands where they pulled down a radio tower because 5G causes cancer, despite it not actually being capable of transmitting 5G. But the original question of does 5G cause tumors was definitely a worthy question. I wish I were kidding with this one. So, I'm a battery systems engineer, and I've worked on a few products you've definitely heard of. I attended the AABC conference in San Diego back in 2018, and one of the talks was about lithium-ion thermal runaway mechanics by Sandia National Labs. Now, thermal runaway is a major topic, and Sandra is a major research outfit, so I was expecting some interesting conclusions and data. The capstone moment of the presentation was when the presenter stated, with a straight face, that the energy released in thermal runaway scales linearly with the amount of energy contained within the cell. In other words, Sandia paid thousands in airfare, hotel, and speaker fees to announce to the world that conservation of energy is still true. And I paid several $100 to hear someone say that. Given how awful the rest of the talks were that year, I haven't attended since. If I could change up the punctuation a little. So there is a significant lack of research funding for endometriosis, which is a debilitating disease that affects 1 in 10 women. But in 2013, some douchy doctors in Europe decided to take what little funding was available and perform an analysis, coming to the conclusion that, although the women affected by rectovaginal endometriosis are suffering, that sure are freaking hot. Tough to deal with because of the whole daily pain, but they be looking fine. And to them I say, well, no shit at. I'm a risk analyst, working primarily with data science, a point eye and such, and a whole heap of statistics. During university I worked for a company producing windmills. Before hiring me, the company had just got some consultants from Microsoft to do an analysis to show if there were a correlation between various input data during production and errors during the inspection of the blade of a windmill. Like if a certain value of heat or pressure in an area would produce certain expensive errors. It took them 3 months and 2 million Danish kroner, about $400k, to come with a major conclusion that there were a very strong correlation between the serial number and the production number of the blade. No shit, Microsoft. As a result they chose to hire me for future stat work. Way back we were trying to be controversial in college. We wanted to see why sex is considered socially so different for men and women. This was not too long after Tinder and such find and fuck sites existed, and after repeated tries we found overwhelmingly that a 3/10 female smoker with few future prospects is 10 times more effective than an the 8th of September 10 male. We only use those with natural gifts and on AAs. It changed the world. We all got full ride scholarships, housing, and they even bought me a car. None of this should have been surprising. It's why we made the study that has since been repeated with the same results hundreds of times. I'm a behavioral health therapist. Been part of helping with some studies. But most studies for behavioral health are based on the outdated notion that mental health issues are separate from real lived experiences, which basically means that most of the studies are done on dealing with symptoms versus underlying causes. So almost all benefits are short-lived, including much of major mental health med studies. It's super problematic. People are not getting better, the suicide rate and overdose rate is higher than it's ever been, and human suffering is still being looked at as if there is no basis in reality, which is just making people feel ashamed, worthless and broken. Yes, meds and CBT can help some people a little bit, but they don't heal trauma, they don't build a better life, they don't treat a lot of the wounds people are suffering from. So now, because of this move away from understanding people's experiences, most research funding is going toward finding ways to suppress people's emotions instead of help them recover. As a therapist who has a great track record of helping people to fully recover, I'm exhausted trying to explain that the cyclical model of telling people and practitioners that your illness is caused by your symptoms and your symptoms are caused by your illness does not equip the practitioner with any tools and causes mass helplessness among family systems and increases human suffering. Symptoms are signs of distress, not signs of organic permanent brain disease. Please, for the love of God, put money into actually helping to validate and aid people in recovering. Sorta scientific. Back in the 90s here in South Florida, there had been a rash of accidents on I-95 in Palm Beach County. Many were from cars shooting across the large grass median and running into oncoming traffic. One of my friends actually died like that. There were traffic studies done to see what they could do, and it was determined that barriers on the sides of the highway would not give people enough of a shoulder on the inside of the road, and cars could hit the barrier and end up right back in traffic, causing more accidents. So more studies were done to figure out what to do. There were articles about it in the paper, trying to figure out how to stop this from happening. Understand, the grass median that separated the two sides of the highway was easily 50 feet wide. It took 2 years for them to finally realize that running a single barrier down the middle of the median would solve the problem. Not exactly no shit, but I saw a study about road rage vs people bumping into each other that ended with a theory that because people can see each other when they are walking, they are less likely to get mad. No, it's because you are vastly more likely to die in a car accident vs bumping into someone while walking, not to mention the financial costs. Coconut products are bad for the heart. Sure, very high saturated fat content is going to be great. Let's eat more of it in everything fat. By the American Heart Association. You can hear a loud dull in how the authors wrote it. Friendly reading. https://www.heartpointorg/n/news/2018/05/01/saturated fats. Why all the hubbub over coconuts paper? https://www.ahajournals.org/doi/10.116/10.43,052 https://www.reddit.com/r/today learned/comment/k008by/to_r_study_an_conducted_an_Australian/male science nerds in an Australian university was found to get laid the least and most likely to be virgins. Female art students had the most sex and also has the highest rate of chlamydia. They also scored the lowest on knowing what chlamydia is. Watched a documentary about farm animals today where the narrator stated that scientists found out that every cow has their own personality. Like, no shit. Every farmer knows that since centuries, but there were scientists needed to make it an actual fact. The study on the beer goggles theory. I learned about it in my first year psychology course. Basically, they found evidence that drunk men find women more attractive than the same men do sober. I was 19 and just sat there hoping it wasn't a government funded study, because anyone could have told you that there were other planets except ours. We knew of billions of other galaxies. Since we hadn't seen another planet, we had to assume our 8 were the only ones in the universe. Tech advances, and then around 2012 the term exoplanet is termed because we saw one for the first time. Well, no shit. Hollow's famous psychology experiment, monkeys choosing comfort maternal contact over food. It just makes more sense that people would choose comfort/maternal contact over food in scary situations. Think about when people get depressed and don't want to get out of bed to eat, or how a lot of people hit snooze to stay in a comfortable bed, even if they're hungry, or how some toddlers cling to their parent or parents/guardian or guardians when they meet a stranger because they are scared. I liked the one that found that kids with unlimited screen time don't do as well in school, and the one that found that kids who drank soda were more likely to be overweight. But my favorite was the BMJ study on women eating while in labor, where half were assigned to eat or not eat, and one of their conclusions was women in labor are not compliant with study protocols as 30% didn't do what they were supposed to. In April last year, 2 weeks into the very strict lockdown, with all shops except supermarkets closed, the member of the UK government responsible for crime proudly announced that shoplifting, stealing from shops, was significantly down compared to 2019. No shit, pretty paddle. In high school, our group did an experiment testing to see if the pressure inside a ball affects the frequency of the bounce noise when it bounces. Turns out the equations involved cancelled out the effect of pressure upon frequency, which we didn't realize until after we had done the experiment to get the data. So the paper we wrote up ultimately said something like the equations predicted nothing would happen, and we observed nothing happening. LMAO, I feel like a lot of the answers given, like with covered as real video games don't cause violence, and 5G don't cause cancer type of researches are done in the same way that a retail worker will go check in the back when asked. Just a bunch of scientists walk into a room, hang out and play some Smash Brothers for a bit, then comes out and says, yeah, 5G don't cause tumors. Caused no shit. This is a quote from this study about acid attacks. https://www.nkb.nlm.nb.gov/pmc/articles/pmc7470663/. In conclusion, it can be said that the criminal act of acid throwing causes physical damage as well as psychological damage. Surgery and medicine can deal with the scarring and the physical sequelae, but complete rehabilitation must involve psychiatric and psychological therapy as well. I would never have guessed any of this with my own common sense. How all these researchers into CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, have discovered that athletes suffering physical contact to the brain once too often, especially in combat sports, is pretty bad for their neurological health. It's funny, because even in pro wrestling, they used to smack each other over the head with a steel chair a lot, and now they don't allow it to happen. Ever. Like, did you really need extensive studies into the brain to know that taking repeated trauma to the head was bad for you? I went to my mother's graduation. A guy was being presented with his PhD. His thesis was a study of employee motivation and happiness. His mind-blowing conclusion: when employees feel their job is secure, they will feel more emotionally stable and feel better about work, thereby being more productive. You heard it here first, people. Employees hate to work for crappy companies. Don't have a source, and am too lazy to Google, but a while ago there were headlines everywhere that said a study had found SpongeBob makes kids stupid. Turns out the study was comparing test results between children who watched educational television and kids who watched SpongeBob. All they had actually found was that shows designed to educate children do a better job educating children than shows not designed to do that. Who knew? Earth ain't flat and vaccines don't cause autism. Yeah, I know what. I'ma start upvoting anything that's relevant/relatively good that's been posted within the first 5 minutes. IDK. I just feel good after touching that little orange/red arrow. Makes me feel appreciated. I remember some dude posted about this and did a pseudo AMR because he was super stoked about quitting his job and starting his own business. Over the course of the thread it became pretty clear that he wasn't reporting income from his new business because he would get less from the UB pilot. It was here on Reddit. I wish I would have saved the post. Science builds on other science. A breakthrough paper needs to reference other papers to make a foundation for its own findings, often as a single, nearly throwaway sentence with a footnote to that study. Therefore, there is a ton of water is wet science out there. To that end, in my field, dentistry, the most obvious results study showed that the harder you pushed a cutting burr through a material, the more it cut. As someone that developed insomnia due to 2020, I feel this so deeply. I was getting 5 to 6 hours average for months when in normal times I'm a 8 to 9 hours person. I've been doing sleep training for the last few weeks, and I'm up to 7 hours average now and already feeling so much better, but there was nothing that helped when I wasn't getting enough sleep. I once did a physics class lab in high school. They had us measure the temperature of hot water in a jar across time. Surprise surprise, the conclusion is that hot water cools down if you leave it out. I had to get up at 5 AM for that class. The studies they do on universal basic income, where they take like 100 low income people, give them a free chunk of cash every month for like 6 months, and then declare the amazing conclusion that those people were happier and none quit their jobs or stopped working.